terminology. So let's go over a few terminology things. There's a lot of terminology stuff out there, more than it would just take forever to go over all of them. So I'm going to go over some of the bigger ones that are interesting to me and that I will use in my programs with my people, but you'll hear a lot more out there. Something funny, I just learned one actually. I was looking up some just to see what else is out there. And I did not know that ATG, like the ATG online coaching, these guys, it's all about the bulletproof knees. That's his program, about having good joint function in your leg, particularly. ATG stands for ass to grass. I did not know that. And when I read that, I was like, oh, and he's like a deep squat, squatting all the way down. I didn't know that's why his thing was called ATG online coaching. It's really funny. Anyways, some other ones. Let's see. First of all, hypertrophy, otherwise said hypertrophy. I don't know which way it's said. What do you guys think? When I lived in California, in my head, I guess, maybe I said it out loud one time, I would say hypertrophy. And then maybe someone heard me and they were like, excuse me, hypertrophy. And I was like, oh, and that was in a medical class. And then I moved out to Wyoming and I was in a different medical class and I was like, yeah, blah, 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 hypertrophy. And they're like, it's hypertrophy. I was like, okay, I guess it depends on where you come from. I have no freaking clue. There probably is a proper way to actually say it, but that just means muscles getting bigger, cells getting bigger. So bodybuilders, for instance, are concerned with, so you have strength trainers who do certain things. They are big dudes, but their main goal is to get the muscles stronger, which is a different kind of working out than just simply making it swell. So hypertrophy is the swelling and enlarging the muscles. That does not necessarily mean that you are stronger. You will get stronger if you make muscles bigger, but a lot of these strength training guys are actually much stronger than bodybuilders, but they don't look it. They don't look like they would be as strong, but then you go and see who can lift more, strength trainer killed them. So hypertrophy, that's big one is a fly versus a press, just so everyone knows. A fly is like when you keep your arms straight and you come forward like that, like a chest fly. So you bring your arms from the sides, maybe you're laying back on a bench and you bring them from the side straight over your chest. Your arms don't bend at the elbow at all. Whereas a press, your arms bend the whole time as you bring the dumbbells down and up. So fly, arms straight the whole time as you work your chest. And then press means like a dumbbell press would be your elbows bend, like when you're doing a bench press with a barbell. Okay, speaking of barbells and dumbbells, the barbell is the bar, of course, and the dumbbell is just the ones you pick up with one hand at a time. You can't pick them up two hands at a time, but they're meant typically for like a dumbbell bench press would be the two separate weights that you lower and raise up, whereas a barbell is the actual bar, like a 45 pound standard bar that you load weights on the side. That's a barbell. And the interesting thing about the dumbbell is where it comes from is when guys started working out, it used to always just be sports. You would do sports and that would dictate how you looked. Maybe your job dictates how you look. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, but it really started maybe back to 1880 something, definitely by 1890s, it was a thing. It was called a physical culture. It was basically working out for the sake of working out. So that's the first time guys would just lift up things to make their body look better or to get stronger, simply to get stronger, not because they're playing a sport and then you just happen to look away because of all the sprinting and lifting stuff and tackling people or whatever it is. You just get bigger for the sake of getting bigger because you lifted weights. And they were called physical culture. It was a new thing back then. And to lift heavy things, they would take like bars and whatnot, and they would lift an actual bell, right? But they would take the little part that dings out of it so it couldn't make any noise. So it was a dumb bell. And so they take the bell part out of it and they would attach that to a stick or whatever kind of pull, lift it, and they would call it a dumbbell. And that's where the term comes from, which I think is really interesting. Kettlebell, we use those in my program too, depending on what you're doing. But I don't know why it's called that. It's the little thing that's like a ball and it has a handle on the top. That's a kettlebell. Maybe because it looks like a tea kettle. I don't know if that's true. Let me know if my guess is correct. Goblet squat is a fun one. A true goblet squat, a lot of people mess this up. They will hold a kettlebell and just do squats. You're actually supposed to hold a kettlebell upside down, almost like it looks like a goblet, like a type of cup, something you drink out of. I had a buddy I was training and he heard the term and he was like, yeah, I was practicing my goblin squats. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, I'm just doing my goblin squats. And I was like, bro, goblet, Goblet, like a cup. Goblet, not goblin. No such thing as a goblin squat. Maybe someone could make it up and then he could be correct somehow. Okay. Pressed versus pull. Anything pressing just means forward motion, like away from your body, and a pull would be pulling towards you. So whenever someone says like a bench press, we're pressing away. And if you're doing like a dumbbell pull, that'd be like a dumbbell row, right? Because you're pulling. Curls would be considered a pulling motion. And if you did a tricep pulley press, it's where you grab the pulley machine and press back because you're pushing away. So anything where you're going away from your body is always a press. Anything where you're pulling into your body is a pull. It tends to work your biceps and back versus working your chest and tricep. Okay. So that's the difference there. Plyometrics and calisthenics. Calisthenics is just your own body weight, like squat down, stand up. That's calisthenics with no weight. Push-ups, calisthenics. Pull-ups, calisthenics. And it means you're not loading weight on yourself. If you just push up with, say, a 45-pound plate on your back, then it would no longer be calisthenics because it's weighted now, working with weight. Plyometric means bursting through the motion to like the whole way through. So essentially jumping. If you squat down and stand up, that's a calisthenic squat. If you squat down and then push as hard as you can the whole way through the motion and then launch yourself, you jump, right? That's a jump. That is a plyometric exercise. So if you just do push up, down, chest hits the ground, and then push yourself up, that's a regular calisthenic push up. If you push as hard as you can and launch yourself a few inches off the ground, that would be a plyometric push up. So plyometric just means bursting through the entire motion, working as hard as you can through the whole motion is plyometric versus calisthenic. Body composition, another one. So sometimes when we work out, the reason I wanted to mention this one in particular is because some people don't necessarily want to do the dietary part of stuff at first. Totally fine. What's going to happen is you're going to have some body recomposition. So say your weight doesn't move, but you are lower in body fat and you are gaining muscle. So you will look different because your body fat is reducing, your muscle is increasing. And so your body has a different look to it. So like a body recomposition, it's just what your body is kind of built of and made of. So you can not necessarily drop weight, but you look better than you did before you started because of body recomposition, because of your new current body composition. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about that. Last one, functional movement. It's an up for debate one a little bit. Some people would have their own definition. The way I see it is essentially functional means it translates into everyday life, right? So if you are isolating, the more isolated something is, the less functional it is to me. So good example, if I am rowing the way I do single arm rows, if I don't brace myself on a bench press, I don't do anything like that. I actually just hinge and bend way far forward until my upper body is basically flat to the ground. And I pick up a dumbbell with one hand on purpose. I don't do two at a time. And I row on one side to be very functional. If you didn't do that, let's say, and you braced yourself and you rowed, you brace up, or even if you use a machine where your chest is up against something and you grab onto a lever and you pull the lever back, and that means you don't really have to brace your core because your core is up against a wall, right? Some kind of padding or something, some kind of like upright bench. So you don't have to brace your core. So it's not very functional because then if you're in real life, I need to grab like a rope or something, right? What kind of lives we live, some kind of like action hero. You need to grab a rope and pull it. If you're used to always having that board right there, you're going to topple over real fast because you lack strength in your core. Your back, the strength of your back has far surpassed the strength of your core, and you're not able to pull in a functional way where you could actually help somebody. Whereas I, on purpose, one side at a time, and I'll pull that way. My muscles are working in like a cross section where it's very unbalanced on purpose. And then I use the other hand and I row on the other hand without bracing on anything. That way if my core wasn't strong enough to hold the weight and I would collapse, but my back was strong enough, I'm not going to be able to pull the weight. I need my back and my core and everything else involved in that movement to do the workout, the exercise where I'm working my back, because to me, that's more functional. Same thing when I do my shoulders. I don't go on a machine that's on a track where my back is leaning up against something. I don't want to do that. I stand up. I use one hand at a time. I press. I do all of them with one side, and then I switch the weight and I do all of my upward presses with the other side on purpose so that I'm off balance. So my body has to adjust and balance and get used to my core being strong because I want my body to be highly functional. I don't want to just swell the muscles. If I was doing something that was not as functional, that's fine if you're doing something like bodybuilding and you just want to swell the muscle. You're not concerned with overall function and whatever. You're just trying to look aesthetically pleasing. And that's your goal, make the muscle bigger. So I like functional over not functional, but that's what the term functional movement versus a isolated or not functional movement mean to me. But again, you might hear different somewhere else, a little bit up for debate. Those are some terms. If you guys have any other terms, hit me up on my Facebook page. Let me know. Or if you don't understand what a term means, you try to look it up. I don't really get this. Or if you want to use me as like your Google and just ask me questions, I love answering them. So just let me know. All right. Thanks for listening. Till next time.